come, Ray. The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball.
Little roller up along first, behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win.
Now the 2-1. Line drive to the base hit. Just as the score of the tying run. Green to the plate. And he is safe. Safe at the plate. The Braves go to the World Series.
Have reserved seats somewhere along one of the baselines that sat when they were children and cheered their heroes.
Gibson swings and a fly ball to deep right field. This is going to be a home run. Unbelievable!
A 3-run home run for Bucky Dent. The Yankees now lead it by a score of 3-2.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mazeroski has hit a 1-0 pitch over the left field fence at Ford Field to win the 1960 World Series.
They'll arrive at your door as innocent as children, longing for the past.
The Pope arrived at Yankee Stadium. As one enthusiastic announcer put it, he is standing on second base.
Reggie Jackson. Long drive right field. It is led by big World Series. The Blue Jays are World Series champions as Joe Carter hits a 3-run home run.
Brackett throws. There's a ball coming. It's going to be, I believe, the Giants from the pennant. The Giants from the pennant. The Giants from the pennant.
The 0-1 pitch. A liner off Nagy's glove into center field. The Florida Marlins have won the World Series.
The memories will be so thick that I can brush them with my faces.
The 1-0 delivery to Fisk. He swings, long drive, left field. If it stays fair, it's gone. Home run! The Red Sox win. And the series is...
Lolich fires. Ball is hit high in the air. This should be the series. Freehand waving everybody away in foul territory. Detroit wins. Here's the pitch to Willie. Here's a liner straight to Richardson. The ball game is over and the World Series is over. Willie McCovey hit it like a bullet. A line drive right.
Baseball to mark the time.
Take. I'll tell you what, we haven't heard.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Candlestick Park for Game 3 of the 1989 World Series.
It's been erased like a blackboard, rebuilt and erased again.
Frank Robinson, the right-hand batter. Long drive to left field. Way back. Yes, it's hit back. Home run.
Base hit loaded, 1 out. Pena in a chance. The Twins are going to win the World Series. The Twins have won it.
Ozzie with 1 out. Smith corks one into right down the line. It may go. Go crazy, folks. Go crazy. It's a home run. And the
Willie Mays just brought this crowd to its feet with a catch, which must have been an optical illusion to a lot of people.
This field, this game, is a part of our past, Ray. It reminds us of all that once was good, and it could be again.
Broadcasted live.
There are balls coming from all over the place. Left field, center field, right field. See, this is the kind of thing, quite honestly, right now, that makes you want to see the Chicago Cubs team lose.
Now, are you just saying you want to have fun, or do you really want to have fun?
It'll be fun.
Will the next person that sees anybody throw anything onto this field, point them out, or get them out of here? You don't live in Cleveland. You live in Cincinnati.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
That is the farthest thing in the universe from the truth.
Hello, everyone, live. It's the Dan Scott Show. And right there is your host, Dan Scott.
All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the program. I am Dan Scott. That is Forrest Stulting. Another gorgeous day here in the upstate of South Carolina. It sounds like a broken record every morning, but we have been blessed with some incredible weather.
Not a cloud in the sky.
Yeah, it is phenomenal as we look out towards Paris Mountain across the visitor stands here at Paladin Stadium. Happy to have you with us here on on this Wednesday edition of the show, which will feature Dave Glenn of ACCSports.com coming up at 10:25, as he always does on Wednesdays. But we've, as always, got a lot to get into. We are also battling some technical difficulties this morning and trying to push our way through. So as far as we're able to tell, the video may be a little choppy, but we think the audio is working fine. So you may see us in stop motion.
80 style.
That's about as much as iRobot.
There you go.
But anyway, how you doing, man? Everything
doing great, man. Just want to give a shout out to my older sister. It's her birthday today. So happy birthday, sis. I love you, and hope everything is going well where you are up in New York.
Sounds good. How much older?
8 years. 7.5. 7.5.
Okay.
Yeah. To be more specific.
So she's out in the real world.
Oh, yeah, she's been out in the real world. Yeah, she's got her PhD from UCLA. Now she's teaching at Columbia University in New York. So
nice.
She's the smartest one of the bunch.
Well, you know what? That led itself open to so many comments, and it was too easy.
I know.
I'm just going to let it go. I'm just going to let it go.
I know.
Not going to say a word. Anyway, hope that everything's going well with you this morning. As we do at the start of every show, we try to give you some updates on what's going on from a Furman perspective, things on campus that are happening or coming up, or awards that have been won, and Forrest has that roundup for us.
Oh, absolutely. On the women's soccer team, Kelsey Weaver has been named the Women's Soccer Player of the Week. She's from Noonan, Georgia. And she's gotten 6 straight shutouts, which is a Paladin record, 540 minutes without allowing a goal. Staying in the soccer world, the men's soccer team battled Mercer to a 0-0 tie last night in double overtime. It was a really great game. Really played well on the defensive side. Both goalies made some pretty good saves as well. But for the most part...
This is the problem I have with soccer.
What's that?
A game should never, in any sport, should never end in a tie.
I agree for the most part, I think. Definitely in baseball and basketball and football, but soccer's... I'm not schooled enough in soccer to say one way or the other, but I'll leave that up to more of the soccer world. But I definitely agree. I wish it was more of a win-or-loss game for sure.
Well, I mean, if we have Doug Allison here tomorrow, I'll just put the question to him.
There you go.
I'm not scared. But just my personal opinion as a sports fan, no sporting contest should ever end in a tie. Unless there are outside circumstances like weather or something that suspends play. But if the game is played to its completion, that completion should end with one team
victorious,
winning over another. Yeah. So anyway, that's my opinion. Carry on.
Fair enough. Men's golf, they finished the Firestone Invitational yesterday. They finished tied for 6th. And Keller Harper and Hunter Nichols tied for 16th at +3. On the women's side, the Paladins finished the Annika Invitational up in Minnesota. They tied for 4th. And Natalie Srinivasan finished tied for third with a -4. Volleyball, they won 3-1 over the Citadel last night. Just some names here. You have Meg DeMar with 11 assists, 14 digs, 4 aces. Jameel Johnson, 14 kills, 12 digs. Not sure what any of that means, but we'll keep on saying it.
I believe a kill would be
when you
a spike.
Yeah.
And a dig would be
when you bump it up from a spike.
Yeah.
I was more playfully joking around there, Dan. But
I'm just guessing at those things because I
think you're absolutely correct.
I honestly, would not be able to say that's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
so.
I'm pretty sure I was just playfully joking around there, but and poking a little fun at the folks in volleyball. But
in what?
Volleyball.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. The cross country men are ranked 12th. From 12th to 10th this week, tied for the highest ranking ever. The women moved from 29 to 21 in the United States Track and Field Cross Country Coaches Association of the United States of America, the UTSF, and a whole bunch of other letters. And football, they got a big commitment last night from Hayden Mann, a QB out of Mabane, North Carolina. This kid is a lefty. He's 6'1", 6'2", but man, does he have some wheels, Dan. He's got a really good arm. I'm really excited to see what this kid can do for the Paladins in the coming years.
All right. Anything else going on?
That's all I got.
All right. Sounds like a plan. You got some trivia, I'm sure.
Oh, you know I do, Dan.
Because if nothing else for us, trivial.
That's the one thing we know the answer to. All right, we're going to go with a broader topic here with college football. So not necessarily just Furman or not just FCS, but more FBS.
Wow, okay.
Who has the most yards gained in a career?
Most yards gained in a career in all of college football.
All of college football.
So could this be at any level, or is this strictly the FBS level?
We'll stick to FBS, as I said, I think.
Okay,
yeah.
Stick to the FBS level.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I'll say this. The answer used to be well known, but I do not think that people will know this answer.
Okay. All right. Well, if you have a guess, you can obviously leave it in any of our options where you're watching the program, either Facebook Live in the chat section there or on Twitter via Periscope. We have obviously a comment section there, or you can hit us up on Twitter at Dan Scott Show and leave your guess there. So anyway, as we continue, and SoCon John points out that the NFL can end in a tie. I said, I didn't say it couldn't. I said I don't believe it should.
Sure.
I don't believe that any sporting event should end in a tie. Now, and obviously, you get to the playoffs in the NFL, then there is no tie.
I'll just go on. Yeah, go on until the victor reigns.
But in the regular season, they'll play up to a full quarter of overtime, and if nobody's winning, the game will end in a tie, which I don't like.
Yeah, I guess there's a reason why you play it on the field, and that's to decide a winner, not a tire. So, but that's just.
Yeah, and what happens is that as it works, especially in the NFL, when you play so few games, that can have a remarkable effect on league standings, because standings aren't done by necessarily wins and losses. They're done by winning percentage. So a team, just for instance, a team that goes 12-4 is, most likely going to win a division. But if you have a team that goes 12-3-1, they've won as many games. You see the winning percentage changes.
Yep.
Because of that tie.
You're rewarding a team for tying, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Or it can work the other way. It can penalize a team for tying. So let's play all games till we have a winner.
I'm all for it, Dan.
That's all I'm saying.
I'm all for it.
What else you got going on? Anything?
I did color last night for the men's soccer game. It was a lot of fun. I think I did all right. Did better than last time, but definitely a lots of room to improve, as they say.
Well, the easiest way to do that is to go back and watch the broadcast.
Oh yeah, I will be doing that this weekend on when I have a little bit of free time. I think.
When would that be?
What, free time?
Yeah, because we'll be on the road all day Saturday.
That is true, I guess. I don't know. Maybe Sunday morning if I get up enough in time to do that before my Sunday morning lift. So we'll see.
That's good. Did you work with Scott?
Yep, Scott Cole.
Yeah.
Yep, he's a fantastic person to work with.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I know he really enjoys doing those soccer matches.
Mm-hmm.
And he does lacrosse and he does some basketball. He's kind of a jack of all trades around here.
Well, one-man pony show for sure.
Mm-hmm. Does sidelines for television on the football broadcast.
Yep.
So we just can't get rid of the guy.
No, we can't. One way or another.
That's fantastic. I tell you what, why don't we go ahead, since we've got Dave in the middle, why don't we go ahead and get to the first of your three things we can spend, or you pick one. We can spend 4 or 5 minutes on one before we go to a break and get Dave up. What do you think?
We'll just go with some college football since that is not the heaviest topic of the day. We got three little things I want to point out here. Georgia, Kirby Smart won't name a starting quarterback. Both Jake Fromm and Jacob Eason are up for the task. But is this smart for him not to name a starter, or do you think this is okay for the team?
I guess everything he does technically is smart.
Well, Dan, if you look at it that way.
may not be intelligent.
There you go.
But everything he does is smart.
It's for the stamp of smart approval.
Yeah. You know, in a couple of thoughts here. Number one, he may have told the team who's starting.
Sure.
And is just not announcing it publicly. And if that's the case, that's fine. But if he's leaving it up for grabs, I mean, is there a reason that Fromm wouldn't start? I mean, I know Eason lost his job to injury in the first game of the season, and the old axiom is that you shouldn't lose your job to an injury. But tell that to Wally Pipp. The way Fromm has been playing, the way George has been playing, my estimation would be, why would you mess with that success?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I mean, I think there's no reason to even give I guess Jacob Eason has the ability to be a starting quarterback with how well Fromm has played. I think you got to give the job to him and how well the offenses played around him. But at the same time, Eason might be better overall in terms of skill sets. But so it's almost like a double-edged sword there, where you want the better quarterback, or do you want the guy who's proved himself and can handle the offense and it's been going in the right direction lately?
I would be hard-pressed. And look, Kirby Smart knows his team a lot better than I do. But I would be hard-pressed to mess with something that's working right now. Now, if Eason is back and healthy and you get in a situation where Fromm starts to struggle a bit, then, yeah, you can make that change again. But I'm just a big believer that if the train is rolling in the right direction, you don't do anything to mess up the tracks. And right now, Georgia's train is rolling in a pretty good direction.
Oh, my goodness.
And again, you could kind of make the argument that they're doing it largely on the back of their defense and their running game. So, whether it's Eason or Fromm in there, it doesn't matter. And there's credence to that argument.
Sure.
But still, you're asking me, things are moving in the right direction right now. I don't mess with success.
I'm right there with you on that, Dan. Moving way out west here, Washington State. Oh, excuse me. We're going to go with Chris Peterson of Washington first, the head coach of the Huskies. He apologized to his fans for having late games because they're usually 8 o'clock on the Pacific Coast time, and so they're not getting much exposure. And so this leads to not many teams or riders or fans on the East Coast knowing what the Huskies can do in a full game. And I think the way Peterson said it in his interview yesterday, that this is putting them at a huge disadvantage. And even though they did go to a bowl, the college football playoff last year, they need to be exposed more to the East Coast and play 1 o'clock games on the West Coast or 4 o'clock games on the West Coast, where they'll be late afternoon or prime time on the East Coast. But due to the Pac-12's big TV network, they want the Huskies in their prime time on the West Coast.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things here. It rings a little bit hollow when you made the playoffs last year.
Sure.
Number one. Having said that, I understand what he's talking about. But, this is where we are in college athletics, just like in professional athletics. Television is going to set the times. And if the Pac-12 can get the biggest the biggest audience with Washington in its prime time slot, West Coast time, then that's where Washington is going to be. If ESPN wants to step up and take that game and move it to a different time, then so be it. But that's the nature of geographically where you're located. That's the nature of the business of college sports now. The fact that television pumps so much money into it means they're going to dictate what time the games start, and there's nothing you can do about that.
I completely agree.
And again, you made the playoff last year.
Yeah, I mean, I understand him wanting his players and his coaches to be exposed.
So would I.
Nationally.
So would I.
Yeah, but at the same time, you just got to play with the cards you're dealt with and do the best you can, especially when it's well out of your hands and into the hands of the TV network.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I don't blame him for doing that, and I would imagine that there's a little bit of a method to his madness. He knows that the TV schedule is what it is, and there's nothing he can do about that. But by making that statement, making that apology, quote unquote, to his fans, that in and of itself is going to draw some media attention to his program.
Yep.
So I think there's probably a little bit of a calculated effort to what he's doing here. So take that for what it's worth. I don't disagree with him.
No, not one bit.
But at the same time, there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, as last year showed, you win enough games, you're going to make it into the playoffs anyway, which you did, and you played late games last year as well.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yep. Last thing in the college football realm, moving just slightly east but staying in the state of Washington, going to Spokane, where Washington State, they were fined $25,000 for fans storming the field after the USC law. They beat USC. The Pac-12 introduced a new policy last year for when fans storm the field or the court. They'll be fined, and it's like this. For first offense, $25,000. Second offense, $50,000, and for third offense, $100,000. So, and I will say this before we move on. They did rush the field after a triple overtime win against Boise State on September 9th this year, but they were not fined for that.
I really got mixed feelings about this because I understand the safety issue.
Sure.
I understand why the conference and even the school would want to have that situation under control.
Mm-hmm.
But finding a school, that's nothing but easy money for a conference, because there's no way in the world that a school can keep students from storming the field.
I completely agree.
It's just like over at Clemson, they don't try, because over at Clemson, it's a tradition for fans to meet at the Paul after a game, win or lose.
Mm-hmm.
They do it every single game. But I've been at games over there where you knew that storming the field was going to happen, and they finally installed collapsible goalposts.
That was the best thing that ever happened to college football,
because the goalpost got ripped up once and paraded downtown somewhere.
Yeah.
And of course, the idea people could get hurt being up on it when it comes down. But you think about it, they have probably 500-600 police officers on hand, maybe more than that.
Sure. Yeah.
At a game at Death Valley, or you pick another large venue. That many police officers sounds like a great number until you compare it to 80,000.
Yeah,
which is what's in the stands.
Small odds.
Yeah. So, basically what they do is just get out of the way and let him go. And for the conferences, that's just cherry picking easy money.
I agree.
That's all that is. There's no way in the world you can try to educate your fan base. You can put out notices. You can make announcements on the PA system all you want to. But if it's a big win over somebody, they're coming.
Yep. I mean, as simple as that. I mean, I enjoy fans storming the court in the field in college athletics. It kind of brings the camaraderie to a high level. And just seeing the pictures from that game, just the smiles on the Huskies players' faces. I mean, the Cougars players' faces was incredible.
And look, there are some concerns. Not only are you talking about people getting injured with the goalposts, which is why they made the collapsible goalposts, but also, opposing team players and coaches getting off the field safely and getting taunted by fans. So again, there is a reasoning for doing what you're doing, but fining a school $25,000, you think that honestly, if they were being honest right now, after the win that they got over USC on national television, which has vaulted them up the rankings, do you think that the athletic department at Washington State cares that they have to write a $25,000 check for the fans storming the field?
I don't know. I don't know.
I would say that the athletic director wrote that check with a big smile on his face because it was a big night that they got to celebrate with all of their fans after the win that they got on national television. So, anyway, we need to go to break. It's 10:27 and we don't have Dave on yet.
Oh man,
so
call him up.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go to break. Get Dave Glenn on. The show, as always, is brought to you by our friends at the Atlanta Bread Company in Cherrydale Plaza. Please stop and see Jeff down there and tell him how thankful you are that they have sponsored this program, how thankful we are especially, and enjoy some great food while you're there. Here's more about them as we go to break. Back in a moment. The Atlanta Bread Company wants to make your dining experience as convenient as possible, especially if you're ordering takeout. Go online to atlantabreadcompany.com, place your order there, and pay for it too. Then, when you get to the restaurant at Cherrydale Point, you breeze right by the cash registers and go straight to the pickup counter where your food will be waiting. And speaking of food, try the new Shrimp Po' Boy, a delicious and surprisingly healthy addition to the already great menu. That's the Atlanta Bread Company, Cherrydale Point in Greenville.
Looking for a good lunch spot in the Travelers Rest area? The Cafe at Williams Hardware is your place. Williams Hardware has food for the whole family, from the famous Reuben to the barbecue chicken quesadilla and their daily lunch specials, which includes the award-winning BLT unpimento cheese with pepper jelly, served Tuesday to Thursday. Williams Hardware also serves breakfast on Saturdays from 8 to 11, perfect before Furman home game. And don't forget the gift shop, which offers items for anyone on your list. Go see your friends at the Cafe at Williams Hardware, 13 South Main Street in downtown TR. Full menu and operating hours at the Cafe at WilliamsHardware.com.
So you've got a busted phone or tablet screen. Time to get a new device? Nope. Time to give it CPR. CPR Cell Phone Repair at Cherrydale can repair almost any phone or tablet screen on the market and usually can do it same day. In fact, if you have an iPhone, the fix usually takes less than an hour. CPR Cell Phone Repair also can fix computers and gaming systems, both screens and hard drives. And they sell refurbished devices and new accessories. Stop by and see the new owner, Janet Culver, today and check them out on Facebook. That's CPR Cell Phone Repair at Cherrydale, 864-282-9097. Give it CPR today. All right, it is 10:30 straight up here on this Wednesday morning here in the beautiful upstate of South Carolina. Dan Scott, Forrest Stulting, running a few minutes behind, so we're not going to waste any time. We're going to go right to the celebrity guest line. Dave Glenn, as you likely know by now, is the chief cook and bottle washer at ACCSports.com. Hosts the David Glenn Show, syndicated throughout the state of North Carolina, and is kind of a jack of all trades, especially when it comes to visiting with us on this show. We put every one of his careers to the test here. David, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Dan. Good to be with you again.
Good to have you here as always. I guess I kind of want to start right where we left off a little bit last week, and that is this mess involving Louisville and the FBI and the college basketball scandal. we have gotten to the point now, I think, as most people know, where the process to officially get rid of Rick Pitino has started. The Tom Jurich situation is not quite as clear-cut. We'll maybe talk about that in a minute. But the Pitino situation is one that is going to be fascinating. And again, I draw on your law degree here because Louisville says they owe him about $11,000. Pitino says they owe him about $44 million. How'd you like to be the arbiter in that discussion?
Well, I'd love it because the way these things work, the lawyers always win.
Yes.
Right? On these close calls, the only guaranteed outcome is that the lawyers will win. And it all comes down to the contract and how it's written and what facts are available. And there are clauses in coaches' contracts, including Rick Pitino's, that say if your actions bring disgrace upon the university, you can be fired for cause. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but most of these coaches' contracts involving millions of dollars have that clause in there where if you're fired for cause, we owe you very little money, if any. If you're fired without cause, which means you're just losing too many games or, the more traditional dismissal, well, then there's a buyout clause in there that determines exactly how much they do owe you, and that is in the millions of dollars. So whether you're fired for a reason, in that case, bringing disgrace upon Louisville basketball or the Louisville athletic department, matters a lot, and it can be a difference of tens of millions of dollars. And as the FBI case moves forward with the shoe company executives and the assistant coaches who have been named at other schools, and even Rick Pitino as the coach two in the indictment, we're going to learn more about what evidence they do and do not have. Rick Pitino's lawyers are going to, in all likelihood, argue that whatever conversation was had from Rick Pitino to the Adidas shoe representatives, it was not a crystal clear confirmation. Yes, please send $100,000 to the family of this recruit that I'm trying to sign. And of course, Louisville did sign. And the FBI is going to have to come up with some good evidence. Obviously, if it's an audio tape, wiretapping, if somebody had a microphone, under their shirt or whatever, then it's not just Pitino says this, the shoe rep says that. Then you have some hard evidence where a judge or jury is going to have an easier time figuring out which person to believe. But if it's just he said, she said, that just adds a gray area to whether Louisville is going to have just cause for firing Rick Pitino, because he's going to argue, wait a minute, yes, scandals happened on my watch, but there's still no evidence. He'll end up arguing that I, A, had anything to do with it, or B, actively participated in it, or even C, knew about it. And that's where, in all likelihood, this thing ends up with a settlement. And if the evidence against Rick Pitino is stronger, he's going to get little to nothing from Louisville. If the evidence against Rick Pitino is shakier, well, then he's going to have a better case. And then it's in all likelihood, Louisville would be more likely to give him, a larger dollar settlement, even if it wasn't that, $40 million plus.
I told Forrest on the air last Wednesday before we talked to you when the first statement from Pitino's lawyers came out and the kind of defiant tone of that statement. I said, all they're doing is posturing for the negotiation that's going to come over how much of this $44 million he'll actually get, if any. What do we know, David, about the contract language? Because I know that there are contracts out there that also say something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing, that you are responsible for the actions of your assistant coaches. And if he has language like that inside his contract, does that not also make him ineligible, for lack of a better word, for that buyout?
Well, we actually have more evidence about what Rick Pitino's staff members did in the escort scandal than we have in this scandal.
Mm-hmm.
Because once Pitino was named as the coach too, when a lot of folks thought it was going to be a member of his staff who was supposedly working with Adidas to funnel this money to the family of the recruit, that was a surprising development to a lot of people. Now, if the language, Rick Pitino is going to argue, if the language is such in my contract that I can be held accountable for the actions of my staff members, well, then your chance to fire me was back when we learned the details of the escort scandal. And you chose not to fire me then. And right now, there's no evidence that Rick Pitino's staff members were part of this Adidas scandal or this FBI investigation. So when you can't opt not to fire someone when you have a contractual right to do so, and then a year or 5 or 10 years down the line, point back to something and say, well, we didn't fire you back then when we could have under the terms of your contract. But we'd like to sort of go back in time and now use that escort scandal as the reason for firing you now. It doesn't work that way in the legal world. So Louisville took a fork in that road and chose to keep Rick Pitino. So if they're going to win this case, it's going to have to be more on the bringing disgrace upon Louisville. It's going to have to be more on the accumulation of multiple scandals, whether or not Rick Pitino knew personally. They can't simply point back to the escort scandal and say, a year or two later, we're going to fire you because of that.
Hey, Dave Forrest here. I just want to talk some college football, specifically ACC football, as we always do. Miami, Clemson, and Florida State all won this past weekend. Were you surprised by those winners, and were you surprised by how much or how little those teams won by?
Not a lot, really, Forrest. I went into this season thinking that Clemson and Florida State were the powers of the Atlantic, and obviously the DeAndre Francois injury at FSU kind of derailed part of that equation. But I went in thinking that Miami and Virginia Tech were the powers of the Coastal. And really, other than the Seminoles road, I haven't budged from my original thoughts along those lines. Miami is that much better than Duke. Miami proved it against the Blue Devils in Durham on national TV. Clemson clearly 5-0 with 3 of the wins against nationally ranked opponents, playing as well as anybody not named Alabama around the country, and the 2 of them are obviously on a very similar plateau. The Hokies lost to Clemson head-to-head, but frankly, they've been pretty darn impressive otherwise, and losing to Clemson is about as good a loss as you're going to get, even though it was a convincing one for the Tigers over the Hokies. So I didn't have as many surprises this past weekend with those particular results, because teams like Boston College and Syracuse and Pitt and North Carolina were among those we thought would gravitate toward the bottom, and they have. Teams like Clemson, even NC State and Louisville, we thought would gravitate toward the top, along with Miami and Virginia Tech. And for the most part, they have. There have been a couple of surprises. The Seminoles to the negative. Wake Forest has a 4-1 start. That's a mild surprise, maybe. Georgia Tech is 3-1. That's not a shock, but impressive. Virginia is 3-1. That's better than most people would have thought. But to this point, I think there are far more teams in the ACC aligning with our preseason expectations than there are teams that are knocking those expectations to the side.
So you think the injury to DeAndre Francois was one of the main reasons to why the Wake Forest game this past weekend was that close? Because I valiantly or surprisingly picked Wake Forest to win that game, but I didn't think they would actually win. But I was kind of surprised at how close the game was and how many chances the Demon Deacons had to win that ball game.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it wasn't a crazy pick. Florida State is dealing with a true freshman quarterback in James Blackman. I saw more of the Seminoles' loss to the Wolfpack than I saw of their win over the Demon Deacons. But James Blackman looked like a true freshman against the Pack. I mean, there were times that he had trouble signaling the plays in. There were times he had trouble with pre-snap reads. There were times he had trouble completing, a 5-yard screen pass and threw it at the guy's feet. There were times he threw to spots where the receivers were not. That's not to say that James Blackman might not eventually turn out to be a great quarterback for the Seminoles. Most true freshmen who did not go through spring practice, the way many freshmen are with enrolling early nowadays, are not going to be very good right out of the gate. And so that part is not surprising. DeAndre Francois would have been a lot better in all of those ways as one of the best returning quarterbacks in the ACC. And some coaches sometimes roll their eyes at us when we talk about the importance of quarterback. I think we're right more often than we're wrong. And I think the Seminoles 2017 season has been derailed for many reasons. But the number one reason is that they don't have one of the better quarterbacks in the ACC, and instead they're trying to plug in a true freshman and have him learn on the go, and that's just not easy in today's ACC.
Visiting with Dave Glenn, ACCSports.com, and the David Glenn Show. We do it every Wednesday here on the program. Dave, the troubles continue for North Carolina. Larry Fedora's club is not playing well. A, are you surprised? B, are the Tar Heel fans starting to grumble, or do they care now that basketball practice has started?
I'm not at all surprised. I had a lot of Carolina fans harassing me in the preseason in the summer when I said I thought 6-6 should be the goal, meaning just get to a bowl. Continue Larry Fedora's streak in his 10 years as a head coach, Southern Miss and UNC combined. The guy never has had a losing regular season in 10 years as a head coach. And I really thought, given that they lost, the Tar Heels did 88% of their offensive production to the National Football League or graduation. Mitch Trubisky's now the Chicago Bears starting quarterback. Elijah Hood and TJ Logan, the running backs. Ryan Switzer, Mac Hollins, Bug Howard, really good wide receivers. They lost about as much as you can lose on one side of the ball in major college football. And I thought expectations should be lower as a result. When you add to that a slew of injuries that is about as bad as it gets in college football, to me, it's not a surprise that they're 1-4 under those circumstances. They're not going to be a bowl team this year. There's only so much more they can improve. The bottom line is when a great coach like Paul Johnson got hit with an unusual series of injuries 2 years ago, he crashed all the way to, I think it was 4-8. When David Cutcliffe, a great coach at Duke, got hit with an unusual slew of injuries last year, he went from 4 straight bowls to crashing all the way to, I think it was 3-9. It's Larry Fedora's turn to have the worst slew of injuries in the ACC. And when you went in with a somewhat fragile depth chart and then you had that happen to you, this is going to be the worst record on Larry Fedora's decade-long resume as a head coach. Whether fans are calling for his head or not varies tremendously. I think given what he's done through the negative headlines of scandal that he had nothing to do with, I think that's bought him a lot of appreciation from the UNC administration. Are some fans saying what they're seeing is unacceptable? Yes. But that's kind of, I believe, sort of the angry, loud minority, and they're not the ones that make the ultimate decision anyway.
Wait. Are you saying that the lunatic fringe has reared its ugly head up in Tar Heel country?
Every school has one, Dan. It's only a matter of size and degree. There are some schools that I wonder if the lunatic fringe is 50% of the fan base.
Yeah.
But every school I've ever encountered in any part of the country has that 5 to 10% that just sort of unplug their brains and go with emotion and adrenaline overload and don't care if they're being fair toward anybody.
Dave, once upon a time, back in the olden days, Miami and Florida State was such a great matchup.
Yeah.
And now we had some hopes maybe it was going to be better this year, and circumstances apparently have robbed us of that as well. Is this rivalry ever going to return to the heights that we saw in the 1990s when it was just some brutal Saturday afternoons, man?
Wide left, wide right.
That's a really, really high bar to set to get back to that point where Miami's in the midst of winning 5 national championships and Florida State's winning at an almost unprecedented level under Bobby Bowden. I don't know. Maybe in our careers they won't get all the way back to those heights, but I do believe they could get close to it because Jimbo Fisher, putting this year's results aside, has one of the half a dozen best programs in college football, in my opinion. You put together ACC titles, a national title not long ago, NFL pipeline, top 10 recruiting classes on the front end. That guy, we don't have to hypothesize. That guy most years has the Seminoles in that upper echelon and sometimes at the very top. Given what Mark Richt did at Georgia for a decade and a half in what was then clearly the best conference in America in football, the SEC, given that track record, and now that he's back at his alma mater, Miami, he's only in year 2, so he needs time, but he has a chance to play for the ACC title this year. The Hurricanes are undefeated. That game head-to-head against the Hokies could turn out to be, the fork in the road for how that division is decided this year. We'll see. Long way to go. But they were dominant against a pretty good Duke team. They showed some warts against Toledo earlier this year, and they've only played 3 games. So I don't know if they're probably not ready to be that top 10 team this year. But in the next few years, with Mark Richt continuing to build at Miami, with Jimbo Fisher still at Florida State, yeah, this game, rather than being, the 3:30 ESPN game, could very easily end up back in that, 8 p.m. national spotlight game where it used to be. I just don't think the Hurricanes are quite there yet this early in Mark Richt's tenure, and obviously this is a down year for the Seminoles.
Dave, let's kind of come back full circle before we let you go on 2 things. One being Mike Krzyzewski yesterday being rather vocal about the state of college basketball now and how maybe the game is not or administrators or coaches or whoever we're talking about here are not in a place where they used to be because of everything that is associated with the game. What'd you make of his comments, and do people still listen attentively when Coach K speaks?
I think most people do listen attentively. I mean, he's 70 years old. He has, 5 straight gold medals when you combine the Olympics and the other international events. Now he's stepped away from Team USA and he's focused back on his Blue Devils, who are a preseason number 1 in the eyes of many. This is the all-time winningest coach in the history of Division I men's basketball. So he has a thoughtful voice, and everybody except those who just hate him with a passion, like the Antichrist, usually listens to him. The challenge, Dan, on the one hand, I interviewed Mike Krzyzewski 20 years ago, and he was talking about the need for a commissioner of college basketball and how under the broader structure where everybody in Division I is under the same umbrella and all sports are under the same umbrella, basketball is more vulnerable to the types of corrections and scandals, rather, and problems that it has encountered frequently. That's not a new concept from Coach K, even as he talked about the model being broken just yesterday. What's the ongoing problem is that unless the NCAA opts to just abandon its amateurism model, meaning not using professionals to play for their college teams, there's really only so many tweaks that you can make that would reduce the level of scandal and corruption. And there are no rules that, look at American society. You can create a lot of rules. That doesn't mean people are going to follow them. At some point, you have to accept that people will break rules, will break laws, and you just have to penalize them appropriately. There's never been a society created or a set of rules created that solve that problem, and there never will be. But as long as the NCAA clings to amateurism, it's all about tweaks. And you can tweak it in 10 different ways, and it's not going to stop buying players from the high school ranks. It's not going to stop, selling access to college players to these financial advisors and agents. That would require an entire revamping of the system. And in our careers, I don't know about Forrest there, but in our careers, Dan, the NCAA is not abandoning its model unless a Supreme Court decision or an act of Congress requires it to. They're not going to do it voluntarily, not even in the face of these lawsuits. And that means we are stuck with some level of the corruption that we've seen. And it's up to individual fans to decide whether the enjoyment and the upside of the great game of college basketball is still worth celebrating, even though we all understand it has its ugly underbelly as well.
Yeah, no question. Finally, we referenced it right at the beginning. What do you make about this sudden groundswell of support inside Louisville for Tom Jurich to keep his job? At the beginning of this thing, it was a foregone conclusion he'd be fired, but now some big money people, influential people, have stepped up, and something I read from very fine Louisville columnist the other day, Tim Sullivan said that right now it's probably a 50-50 shot as to whether he keeps his job, and the odds appear to be getting more in Tom Jurich's favor every day.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt that Tom Jurich is one of the most successful athletic directors in the country over the last 20 or so years. There's just no debating that. Not everybody likes him. Not everybody likes the Louisville way. But when you go from an athletics budget, for example, of about $15 million, which at the time would have ranked dead last in the ACC. I know the ACC was configured differently with different membership back then, but had Louisville been a member, it would have been dead last. And they have survived this nomadic existence where they go from this conference to that conference and then this conference and now the ACC. And now they're up there with Notre Dame and Florida State as one of the 3 largest athletic budgets in the entire league. That is borderline miraculous. It's one of the most amazing stories I've seen in my 30 years of covering college sports. And a lot of that credit goes to Tom Jurich. It did not raise my eyebrows when so many of the coaches at Louisville stepped up for Tom Jurich. You know, they like him, they trust him, he's helped them, but that's not enough power. It's the next thing that you mentioned. You roll your eyes at coaches. You don't roll your eyes at the biggest money boosters. And if you have the coaches wanting Tom Jurich to stay, and now you have enough big money boosters wanting him to stay, and you have an interim university president, that's not exactly the strongest foundation from which to, pontificate. That's a complicated set of circumstances. And time after time, Louisville has been given opportunities to do things the right way and to get past a scandalous reputation. And time after time, they've dodged those things, and they hire Bobby Petrino twice. And they put up with multiple Rick Pitino scandals. And they sign transfers that have checkered legal backgrounds. And now it's another test of that backbone. And when you have an interim university president going against the forces of big money boosters and those coaches who want Tom Jurich to stay, man, that's a soap opera. Buy some popcorn. Let's get some Coca-Cola. Let's watch to see how this plays out, because it's a fascinating clash of some of the bigger forces that we see in college sports.
Yeah, well, here at Furman, we're a Pepsi school, so we'd have to have that instead. But nonetheless, you're right. There's some great theater still ahead of us before this is all said and done. Dave, tell everybody how they can keep up with what you're doing.
ACCsports.com is the place to go. A lot of football, a lot of basketball, a lot of recruiting with an ACC flavor, of course. Our ACC basketball annual is out, and you'll love this, Dan. In an age of early magazine deadlines, I have Rick Pitino and Louisville winning the ACC title in his hometown or his birthplace of New York City this coming March.
Nice.
So I'd love to have that deadline back, but the rest of the magazine is loaded with great information, and obviously we have plenty of audio there from my interviews. Dabo Sweeney of Clemson is one of my guests today. We send all of that to ACCsports.com as well.
Can't you send a memo to all the newsstands and just have them rip those pages out?
Someday technology is going to allow us, Dan, that when we hit a button on our computer, it somehow magically transforms the article in the magazine that you're holding in your hand. You think we'll get there before we retire? Probably not.
No, I don't think so. Dave, thank you, man. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, guys. Great to be with you as always. Take care.
All right, that's Dave Glenn of ACCsports.com. As we get a break, just remember our friends at Hall's Chop House. They have fantastic steaks, top quality meat, but they also have a wonderful menu that has so much depth to it, and meeting rooms. They can host any type of event that you have, Christmas parties coming up, corporate events, private get-togethers, whatever it is, they can do it for you. Located conveniently downtown. That's Hall's Chop House, the Greenville Steakhouse. All right, to break we go. We'll come back. We're going to run a few minutes overtime as we get things 2 and 3 from Forrest and get things wrapped up on the show today. This is the Dan Scott Show. We'll return in just a moment.
Stuck in a state of falling behind? Struggling to keep up with your kids, finances, insurance? Then let State Farm agent Steve Borkland in Traveler's Rest help you simplify and get to a better state. Because with Steve handling your auto, home, and life insurance, you'll have more time for everything else. More money, too, because adding State Farm policies could mean earning discounts worth up to 40%. That's money Steve can help you put towards a college savings plan. Call State Farm agent Steve Borkland today and get to a better state with State Farm.
Looking for a good lunch spot in the Travelers Rest area? The Cafe at Williams Hardware is your place. Williams Hardware has food for the whole family, from the famous Reuben to the barbecue chicken quesadilla and their daily lunch specials. which includes the award-winning BLT unpimmented cheese with pepper jelly, served Tuesday to Thursday. Williams Hardware also serves breakfast on Saturdays from 8 to 11, perfect before a Furman home game. And don't forget their gift shop, which offers items for anyone on your list. Go see your friends at the Cafe at Williams Hardware, 13 South Main Street in downtown TR. Full menu and operating hours at the Cafe at WilliamsHardware.com.
So you've got a busted phone or tablet screen. Time to get a new device? Nope. Time to give it CPR. CPR Cell Phone Repair at Cherrydale can repair almost any phone or tablet screen on the market and usually can do it same day. In fact, if you have an iPhone, the fix usually takes less than an hour. CPR Cell Phone Repair also can fix computers and gaming systems, both screens and hard drives. And they sell refurbished devices and new accessories. Stop by and see the new owner, Janet Culver, today and check them out on Facebook. That's CPR Cell Phone Repair at Cherrydale, 864-282-9097. Give it CPR today. We're back, and our thanks to Dave Glenn, ACC Sports Journal, ACCSports.com, for doing what he does with us on a regular basis. And again, you can find out all they do there at ACCSports.com. You can find out more about the Walk a Mile Project at thewhamproject.org. You see it right there on your screen. It's an organization that, from a Christian church perspective, does missions work all over the place. They do a lot of work down in Guatemala, as we've been telling you, and that includes building houses for the homeless, finding clean drinking water sources, food sources, and that sort of thing. They can also train you and your organization to do the same thing. Find out more at thewhamproject.org. All right, things 2 and 3.
All right.
Today didn't even get to your theme today, man. We
shucks.
been chasing the show. Oh, but it's never too late.
There it is. There it is.
All right.
All right. The Yankees won the AL Wildcard game last night, 8-4 over the Twins. The Twins jumped out to a pretty hot start, scored 3 runs off 2 home runs in the first inning. The Yankees came back in the first, put up a 3 spot as well. And Brett Gardner, he set the tone with that first AB, drawing a walk off Irvin Santana, and the Yankees needed to get to Santana early to get them going towards their bullpen, which they did. And then the first 4 innings, the Yankees put together some really good at-bats. They forced 20-plus pitches in the first 4 innings, and that made Santana work and Barrios work pretty hard to get those outs, and they put up 3 1-1-2 runs in those first 4 innings, respectively, to draw the victory. And
you know that yesterday was just the 9th time in postseason history that a team has won a game that its starting pitcher got 1 or no outs in the first inning.
Surprised it's that many.
Yeah, last time was the 2012 Reds in the division series against the Giants. I'm thinking back. I think maybe Johnny Cueto got hurt early in that, like in the very first inning of that game, and had to leave.
My goodness.
But yesterday it was a matter of the Yankee starter just getting knocked around, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, both starters had no sliders. They only had 1 pitch for a strike as their fastball, and they left plenty of those fastballs over the heart of the plate, as we saw with how hard those home runs were hit. The Yankees' bullpen was phenomenal. They had 13 strikeouts, and that's tied for the most in a postseason with the 2015 Cubs. And I think David Robertson, he was the MVP of the game. I think he went 3 1/3 innings, only 3 hits, 5 strikeouts. He was just really dominating. But you got to see what Chad Green did in that bottom of the first inning to shut down the Twins and only allow 3 runs, and to not allow the runners on second and third to come in with 1 out. He struck out the second and third batters in that inning when he came in. So
yeah, and then the Twins had another opportunity. I think it was against Robertson. They had the bases loaded, 1 out, and he got a ground ball to short. They didn't turn the double play.
Yeah,
but I think only allowed the 1 run. Was that against Robertson?
Well, Green allowed the bases to get loaded, and then Robertson came in. He got the ground ball, forced it second, and the next pitch he struck out the batter. And so he was just did phenomenal pitching in that game. And really, the top 4 for the Yankees, they set the tone early as well. 7 for 15, 6 RBIs. They scored all 8 runs in that win. But I think some moments that mattered. Obviously, it was Green striking out those the second and third outs in the first inning, holding the Twins only 3 and not allowing them to get out of hand that quick. Gardner's walk, and then Didi's Gregorius' home run in the bottom of the first inning. Robertson getting out of that bases loaded jam with only allowing 1 run, and the go-ahead single by Greg Bird in that third inning. And now in the stretch in the fourth inning to get that double play against Mauer, I believe it was. So just an all-around great effort by the Yankees, and I do want to say that what the Yankees did in the 90s and early 2000s around their core 4, you had last night Judge hit a home run, Sanchez hit a double and scored a run, Bird hit that RBI single for the winning run essentially, and everyone performed except for Luis Severino. So I think where the core 4 is right now in terms of their young players performing is right where they should be.
I have a question now.
What's that?
The National League wild card between the Diamondbacks and the Rockies is tonight.
Mhm.
Are we going to get as much of a detailed review of that game tomorrow as we got of a Yankee win today?
I can guarantee you that's correct, Dan. Especially for a wild card game when it's one and done.
Okay.
So,
all right.
yeah. I mean,
I'll check. We may not be able to get to all of it.
Sure.
Tomorrow,
Yeah.
But. Just wanted to make sure there wasn't a little Yankee flag waving going on.
Yeah, actually, I should have said this beforehand. I should have asked you, do you want the pitch-by-pitch recount? Do you want the inning-by-inning recount? Or do you want the overview recount?
Yeah.
So I'll say this, Dan. I gave you the short answer just then.
Yes.
So
that was the short answer?
Yeah, it was the extremely short answer.
Wow.
Yeah, I could have gone pitch-by-pitch and, yeah.
No,
yeah.
you couldn't have.
I
mean, you have the ability to do it, but you wouldn't have. How about that?
I took about a page of notes last night during that game. So
unreal.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So the Yankees move on now.
Yeah,
they face
Cleveland, which for some reason they're throwing Trevor Bauer in Game 1. I understand Kluber wants to stay on 5 days rest, and Trevor Bauer has pitched really well over this past month and a half, 2 months. But if I'm the Yankees, I'm saying, heck yes, let's go out there and face Kluber, get one game in Cleveland. All you're really wanting is that split. So if you can get Game 1 against Trevor Bauer, you're sitting real pretty, and especially with Luis Severino coming in Game 4, and then you have Gray 1, CC Sabathia probably in 2, and then Tanaka at home at 3. I love our chances to take Games 3 and 4. So honestly, with Kluber starting Game 2, I like the Yankees to win this in 4 games.
So it's best 3 out of 5,
yeah.
In case you're wondering, in the division series. All right, what's thing 3?
All right, thing 3 is the NBA follows suit with the NFL, and they're changing the All-Star format. There'll still be 24 All-Stars and 12 from each league, which will be voted on by the players, the fans, and the media. But the top 2 vote getters in each league will then choose those remaining 22 players recess style and pick them from any league they want. So it's going to be, you're going to have players on the Eastern Conference play with players on the Western Conference and vice versa. So it's going to be a much different format come this, I believe it's in February or early January, I believe.
Yeah,
so
another move that smacks of desperation. The NBA All-Star Game is right there on par with the Pro Bowl in the NFL when it comes to the nobody cares factor.
I completely agree. It was noteworthy enough to get it out there, but at the same time, there's nothing like the MLB All-Star Game right now, and it's just that's the premier event in terms of All-Star events for sure.
I would agree with you. All right, we are at 11:04. What do we have as far as you got some on this dates, and we get the trivia question to get to?
I got a couple on those dates. In 1906, the Cubs win their 116th game out of 152 for a 7.63 winning percentage, which is the best of all time. 1922, it's the first time the entire World Series is broadcasted on radio. Grantland Rice has the call, Giants versus the Yankees. 1944, the only all St. Louis World Series begins. The Browns win their only game in that game. Only a World Series game, before moving to Baltimore. 1955, the Brooklyn Dodgers win their only World Series, beating the Yankees in 7 games before moving out west in 1958. In 1969, the MLB holds its first league championship series, the Mets and Braves and the Orioles versus the Twins.
All right, good stuff. The Brooklyn Dodgers win on this date in 1955 is one that I've had a chance to kind of review a little bit with Carl Erskine, who was a pitcher on that team. I've had the privilege of interviewing him twice, and what that meant to that borough. I think now, so many years removed from it, people really don't have any idea. And then to have the heart of that place pulled out when the Dodgers moved to Los Angeles, it was a tough time. This was the beginning of the end.
It was
for the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Yep. I mean, because I just reading Carl Erskine's book and how many times they got to the World Series, but they lost it to the Yankees in the early 50s and late 40s is just really, really devastating for that team. But winning this World Series was kind of the
1941, 1947, 1949, 1952, 1953. And then finally won in 1955, and then lost to him again in 1956 when Don Larson threw the perfect game against him.
Yep,
so.
that's correct.
Anyway, trivia answer.
Yeah, trivia question. Well, topic first is all FBS college football. Who has the most yards gained in a career?
I seem to remember at one time, I don't think he holds it now, but at one time, I believe the answer to that question was Ty Detmer.
I recall it was Barry Sanders before it was this player who broke it actually last year.
Okay.
So, Donnell Pumphrey of San Diego State from 2013 to 2016, he gained 6,405 yards, with the majority of those coming on the ground.
Okay, so then I have a problem with the way that question is phrased in, because Ty Detmer threw for over 10,000 yards in his career at BYU. So how would he not be the yardage leader?
I don't know. I got straight from the NCAA.com website.